This question is from one Pretoria Berrycloth from Wyarthen, Pennsylvania. Pretoria writes, "You wrote all men are created equal in the Declaration of Independence, yet you owned slaves. Did you attempt to address the issue of slavery while you were writing the Declaration of Independence?" Yes, Pretoria. My original draft of the Declaration of Independence included a paragraph condemning the institution of slavery. The paragraph was included in the list of grievances and read thus: "He has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty in the persons of a distant people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere, or to incur miserable death in their transportation thither." This piratical warfare, the opprobrium of infidel powers, is the warfare of the Christian King of Great Britain. Determined to keep open a market where men should be bought and sold, he has prostituted his negative for the suppressing of every legislative attempt to prohibit or to restrain this execrable commerce. And that this assemblage of horrors might want no fact of distinguished dye, he is now exciting those very people to rise in arms among us, and to purchase that liberty of which he has deprived them, by murdering the people upon whom he also obtruded them, thus paying off former crimes committed against the liberties of one people, with crimes which he urges them to commit against the lives of another. This paragraph was only implicitly a condemnation of slavery. The purpose of the paragraph was to accuse King George III of committing crimes not only against our rights as British subjects, but against human nature itself. But no matter where I would have included the subject of slavery in the document, I would have needed to express it within the context of a condemnation of the King and of Parliament, because that was the nature of the document I was writing. Congress decided that the subject did not serve as an effective grievance, at least partially because the paragraph seemed to place the blame of slavery entirely on the shoulders of the king. When I was writing the Declaration of Independence, I was serving as counsel for the United States of America in the court of the world, prosecuting King George III and Parliament for crimes under natural law. Of course, I did not include any mention of the fault of the colonies in the matter of slavery, any more than I would have mentioned our own blame in any other subject in my argument. If you ever have the misfortune of needing to retain the assistance of legal counsel, and your attorney begins making arguments for the other side of the case, you may wish to consider seeking new counsel. Perhaps the logic of the paragraph was unwieldy. But if the structure of the grievance was the only issue, Congress could have made alterations to the paragraph, as they made changes elsewhere. Instead, they removed the entire subject of slavery from the document. I maintained ever afterward that their real reason for striking out the clause reprobating the enslaving the inhabitants of Africa was something other than any perceived inefficacy of the writing style or logic. I argue that it was removed in complaisance to South Carolina and Georgia, who had never attempted to restrain the importation of slaves, and who, on the contrary, still wished to continue it. Our northern brethren also, I believe, felt a little tender under those censures, for though their people had very few slaves themselves, yet they had been pretty considerable carriers of slaves to others. What they did was to silence the discussion about the problem within the context of this statement of the underlying reasons for our revolution. I well understand that this is a difficult subject to talk about, but we cannot find a solution for problems we refuse to discuss.